trim this. Good morning, everyone. I'm Billy Lavieri. I'm here today with Ifaat Bosse of Bottomline Financial. We're here on behalf of the Final Third Network to discuss what a daily money manager is and learn a little bit how managing finances on a day-to-day basis with a professional and CPA like Ifaat, how it might look in a family setting and what kind of benefits daily money management can be for people in the final third. So Ifaat, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
So why don't you just give me a little bit, give us a couple of minutes of your background. I understand you're a CPA.
I am.
Tell us a little bit about your firm and who you are.
Sure. So as Bill said, my name is Ifaat Bosse. My firm is Bottomline Financial. I am an accountant by background. I studied accounting at the University of Illinois in Urbana. I got my CPA and I worked in public accounting, in nonprofit as well as private industry, all before starting Bottomline Financial, my firm. So yes, I am an accountant, but I really practice in a different space. I work as a daily money manager, and bottom line, I assist them in completing their financial and administrative obligations.
And so what attracted you to the daily money management, that part of the business? Because as a CPA, I mean, you must enjoy working with numbers. You get this certain satisfaction of getting both columns to balance, right? But coming into a family setting, which might be more emotional and more less transparent than perhaps a corporation you might be working for, what are some of the challenges that you find as a daily money manager?
Okay, so part A, the first part, how I actually transitioned into the role is a story actually that I share with people because I think it's really important to understand a couple things. Before I was even married, I was working full-time, I was living on my own, I was saving for retirement. I was completely financially independent. And then I met my husband and we decided to get married and started a family. And we decided to move from the city of Chicago to the suburbs. And also at that point, we decided that I would stay at home with the kids and he would work. So a few years into this arrangement, I needed to write a check for our son. So I called my husband and I said, I need to write a check, where's the checkbook? And he said, with all the other financial information. And Bill, I had no idea where that it was.
In your own home, you didn't know where any of that was?
I knew that there was a file cabinet, and I didn't know where the key was. I had no clue. Uh-huh. So I realized at that point how vulnerable I had become from being completely financially independent to not really knowing where the important things are. So that weekend we did what I like to refer to as a financial cross-training, and I learned where the checkbook is, I learned where the financial information is, I learned where the passwords were, so that if something, God forbid, happened to my husband, I would be armed. And I really tell this story and I tell it a lot, because if just a little bit of planning would prevent a lot of hardship when people are most vulnerable.
Goes a long way.
Yeah. So that's how I transitioned into it.
Okay. But how did you get your first client? So you decided that you wanted to do more of this daily money managing. I'm sure. Did you just create your own business, or was it kind of another organization that you attached yourself to in the very beginning, or how does that look?
Yeah. So. Taking a couple of years back, I actually, when I first started, I was doing bookkeeping. I was doing bookkeeping for small businesses, and I was approached by a wealth manager who asked if I could help with one of his older clients, and I did, and I loved it, and so it took a little bit of time before I did some research, and I realized that there's an organization, a fabulous organization called American Association of Daily Money Managers, and that's the organization that governs the profession of daily money managers, and it's great on so many levels. Sure. But that's when I decided to transition the business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Great. And so do you, without naming names, are there any, can you give us one story of, you walked in and it was a complete and utter disaster, and through time and through patience and organizing your skills, like not necessarily a worst case scenario, but can you give us a story about what your average or the worst situation you've ever walked into?
Well, yeah. So if I So daily money managers work. They come in with all different backgrounds. They work with different populations. A big part of my practice is older adults, and I think it's fair to generalize that a lot of my clients come to me because they've had an event, like they've gone to the hospital. And then they go into rehab, and this is all very new for them, and they've never, before this they were completely independent.
Right.
But then when they come out of rehab, they're facing a new reality, and they need services at home, like for activities of daily living, but they also need help after being away for several weeks with what could be a huge mess on their desk.
Sure, stacks of mail, stacks and stacks.
And they might have been unorganized to begin with and maybe had things that they didn't finish beforehand, but after, it's a real mess. So daily money managers come in. Oftentimes it's 1 or 2 meetings to get them cleaned up and get them back on track so they stay current and don't incur late fees. But other times, this is very common, we do a more routine visit, like a monthly. And another one of the reasons I told you that story earlier about cross-training is a lot of clients come to me because they don't do this cross-training,
right.
Especially women. That's not those aren't the skills that they've honed over their lives with their
They've
husbands.
trusted their husband. Like there's always this separation of labor, separation of duty, where the husband primarily was in charge of the finances and the 401ks. And I see the negative side of that as well, where the wife, God bless her soul, I mean, she trusts the husband to manage assets, but he gets a little bit older and maybe he assumes more risk than is appropriate for a portfolio of that age and that size. And I hear it all the time where the $800,000 portfolio is now $200,000 because he bought a stock that you live and die by the sword, right? So in order to bring women more into the conversation is really an exciting thing of why I wanted to have this conversation with you, and also something to do in the final third, because the truth is, from age 72 and above, a vast majority of women are living alone. Their husbands have passed away, and they're giving tasks and roles that they've never had to do before. So it's really great that you're helping them with that.
I would like to add that many of them, although they haven't done those functions before, are very capable, and it's wonderful to see it unfold because they, once they learn, they run with it, and
they do.
It's often, not always, but often. It's just that they haven't had to do it in the past.
So, if you had to say that of any engagement with your clients, it's 50% actually doing the work for them and 50% education, ongoing education. What are the percentages of people, of the women in general that want to know how to do it, who want to take control and in charge of their finances and their investments, and the daily money management? Like, how would you say your engagements work? Is it most just fix it and I don't want to know how to do it, or can we do this for 6 more months and I want you to teach me?
Well, I think I'd like to answer the question with maybe addressing it, what it is a lot of daily money managers would come in to do. First of all, to answer your question, a lot of it is education. When I work with clients, a big part of what I like to talk to them about routinely is financial exploitation and guarding their assets and not giving out too much information, not even confirming information if they get a phone call.
Right.
But what daily money managers typically do, and everybody is different, but they oftentimes will come in to do bill payment, and so that people stay current and don't incur late fees and penalties. And I'm a big fan of auto pay, and I put whatever I can on auto pay it saves time, it saves money, but some people don't want it, so we prepare the checks for their signature. So depending on where they are in on their ability, is how we manage it.
Okay. So it's not per person level, basically, whatever skills they can bring.
Yeah.
You just work with the best you can with them.
Right, and there are all sorts of things that people come to us for, and I can share that with you as well.
Sure.
Aside from bill payment, people want help with budgets so that they know how much they can spend in any given time period, like for a year. They might know that they get a certain amount from their advisor, and so they have to work within those means, live within those means. So budgeting is something we do for people. Bank reconciliations, so people know how much money they really have in their account at any given time.
And how is your conversation generally with the children of elderly family? Would you find that generally they embrace you, and it's great to have someone do a task that the kids themselves don't have to do? Or would you say there's generally a feeling of suspicion that you're trying to insert yourself into the finances and in the investment world of their parents?
Yes and yes and yes. Everything.
Yes and yes.
So the answer to that question is when people are looking for a trusted advisor, it's always scary. I'm often brought in by another trusted advisor, like an estate planning attorney or a financial advisor or a CPA. So that at least takes out some of the scariness. But what I advise people to do is ask certain very important questions that hopefully the answers to these questions will help a family decide if a daily money manager is a good fit for them. And so what I advise people when they're looking for a daily money manager to ask is, does the professional carry liability insurance like errors and omissions? If they act as a power of attorney, do they have fiduciary coverage? What is their background, and do they carry any kind of professional certification? Can they provide references? That's huge. And actually, I mentioned to you ADAM, American Association of Daily Money Managers. People who are members of ADAM are required to pass background checks. So a good question to ask is, have you passed a background check? It's a vetting. So those are some questions that hopefully the answers to those questions could lead a family to decide, is this a good fit or not?
Does ADAM, the American Association of Daily Money Managers, do they have a checklist available, or have you created one that you can pass out perhaps in the very first step of a potential engagement that the kids can check off with? Because I found that there's a document called the 5 Wishes that I was recently introduced to by Charmaine Conahan from Always Best Care. And it was a great conversation starter. We didn't finish the entire document. There was definitely some family tension on which way, should it be buried? Should they be cremated? Like all these end-of-life questions. So I would imagine that if you had a list of 10 questions before engaging the services of a money manager, that there might be some internal riff because the parents don't want to give up control, but the kids might not want that control, but they're kind of uncertain about handing it off, but it needs to be done. And again, an emotional dynamic, not just the numbers of bank reconciliation. So to answer your question, does ADAM give you a framework of questions? And they do. It's awesome. I can also get the questions to anybody who might want them. You mentioned, I want to talk about the final third for a second, how daily money managers really provide value for that population. And daily money managers provide value on many levels, but the 2 areas that I thought would be relevant to the final third is that they provide value to what I call the sandwich generation. And that is often an adult child who is raising a family of their own and also wanting to assist their aging parents. And so if a daily money manager steps in, then they have alleviated some of the burden, the financial burden. And what's interesting, actually, as long as we're talking about the final third, it is assisting the adult parent, but it's also assisting the adult child who might also be in the final third, or soon to be in the final third. So that's one area. And the other area I wanted to mention is with financial exploitation, when daily money managers help out with bill payment, we get to know what the credit card expenses should look like. We get to know what the bank statement expenses look like. So if there's something that's unusual, we're sort of at the forefront of identifying financial exploitation. The red flag goes up probably first with you. Yes. So that's good. All right, so Ifaat, why don't you tell our viewers how they can get a hold of you and maybe a website address, and then we're going to take a quick break, and maybe we'll do one more segment on the sandwich generation, because my mom and dad are in their 80s. My wife and I have 4 kids. A few of them are still at home, and we have grandkids that we're also helping out on a weekly basis. So it's the sandwich generation is crushing.
So my phone number, my firm is Bottomline Financial. My phone number is 847-987-0969. My website is bottomlinefinancial.com.
Thank you so much, and we'll be right back.